Hello everybody, this is Ray, and today we will be continuing our series on White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. We are going to be taking a look at one of the most comical chapters in this book, Chapter 11, White Women's Tears. Now, I had a good laugh at the title. My wife read this first, and I couldn't wait to actually get to this chapter because I thought it would be funny, but it was funny just in a dumb way. So she starts off by saying, the term white tears refers to all the ways, both literally and metaphorically, that white fragility manifests itself through white people's laments. Now, here I was thinking that when woke evangelicals talk about lamenting, that they were just, a reference to the Book of Lamentations in the Bible, right? No, apparently that's not true. If she's using the word lament here, it must be because that must be a woke term that I was unfamiliar with. You see, I was giving the woke evangelicals too much credit. I thought they were just applying the word lament from the Book of Lamentations. But no, that was not the case. That was not the case at all. So we're going to talk about white tears. Those shed by white women in cross-racial settings. The following example illustrates the frustration that people of color feel when those tears and white women's sense of entitlement to freely shed them. So I guess there is a accusation of racism and someone cries. I assured her that I would handle it. As the meeting started, I told my fellow white participants that if they felt moved to tears, they should please leave the room. Normal people call this segregation. I would go with them for support, but I asked that they do not cry in the mixed group. After the discussion, I spent the next hour explaining to a very outraged white woman why she was asked not to cry in the presence of people of color. And my reaction to this was, wow, so you're trying to keep this environment productive by introducing a rule that takes an hour to explain and justify. You have just wasted the time of the people of color, as she calls them. To repress our feelings seems counterintuitive to being present, compassionate, and supportive. So why would my colleague of color make such a request? In short, white women's tears have a powerful impact in this setting, effectively reinscribing rather than ameliorating racism. Okay, so it gets better. So, does she actually say it here? No. If I instead believe that if having racist assumptions is inevitable but possible to change, which, again, I don't think she presents a system of salvation where you can actually truly change. I feel gratitude when an unaware racist assumption is pointed out. Now I am aware of and can change that assumption. Yes, she does not need Vaseline, as we talked about in the previous chapter. In this way, emotions are not natural. They are the result of the frameworks we are using to make sense of social relations. And of course, social relations are political. Our emotions are also political because they are often externalized. Our emotions drive behaviors that impact other people. White women's tears in cross-racial interactions are problematic for several reasons connected to how they impact others. For example, there is a long historical backdrop of black men being tortured and murdered because of a white woman's distress. And we white women bring these histories with us. Our tears trigger the form of racism of this history, particularly for African Americans. So We all have that, Assassin's Creed genetic memory in us, and we bring this history with us, and we have this bleeding effect going on where white women's tears engender recollections of black men being falsely accused of raping white women. So, wonder how she feels about Clarence Thomas or Herman Cain. Nah. All right. When a white woman cries, a black man gets hurt. All right, that's just hyperbolic. Not knowing or being sensitive to this history is another example of white centrality, individual, and a lack of racial humility. If you're white, you need to have racial humility. You can't view people as individuals who are free of this genetic Assassin's Creed premise in their lives. You can't view people like that. It's white centrality. So, when my co-facilitator pointed out that the white woman had reinforced the racist idea that she could best speak for a black man, the woman erupted in tears. So I guess she's trying to help a black man be understood in this diversity class, and this woke facilitator is like, no, can't do that. Stay in your lane. And that reinforces racism. And then the training comes to a complete halt because all the people rush to comfort this white woman who's crying and accuse the woke black facilitator of unfairness. So again, all these little rules here just waste more time. Let's see. She goes on about that example. The white woman tearfully requested support. Okay, so here's a funny example here. So there's this racial justice organization, maybe not a Black Lives Matter, but something similar. And this white woman is getting promoted over a black woman that's been there longer. The white woman tearfully requested support from the women of color as she embarked on her new learning curve. The new supervisor probably saw her tears as an expression of humility about the limits of her racial knowledge and expected support to follow. So, these are all race hustlers here, and they can't be woke enough. These organizations are promoting white women over women of color. So these organizations can't even follow the rules, the woke rules that insist that you promote a person based on their race and intersectionality and victimhood statuses over their merits. And maybe this white woman had merits, maybe she didn't, but she went out of her way to get the approval of the women of color there, and that still wasn't good enough. Can you really be saved in this new religion? So, you can never be woke enough. There is no end game to this sanctification process of being woke. There just isn't. Whether intended or not, when a white woman cries over an aspect of racism, all attention immediately goes to her, demanding time, energy, and attention from everyone else in the room when they should be focused on ameliorating racism. When she is given attention, the people of color are yet again abandoned or blamed. I guess, black people can cry too. And then she goes on to quote a critical race scholar. That's a code for a Marxist. I also hate that spelling of Kimberly. Just pointing that out. White men, of course, are also fragile, but I have not seen their fragility manifest itself in actual crying. Yeah, I guess that is more of a feminine trait. Yeah, I guess I'll, agree with her on that. But, they'll still withdraw hostile body language, stuff like that, and she'll complain about that. and then they'll try to control the discussion. Tears that are driven by white guilt are self-indulgent. So, once again, white people can't even cry for the right reasons. But, this is kind of a decent point, but not all, white tears in your session are from guilt, I would wager. They are also from being falsely accused in a social setting. That's not cool either. When we are mired in guilt, we are narcissistic and ineffective. Guilt functions as an excuse for inaction. Now, guilt can also be a tool for abuse, especially in a religious context. And you see that sometimes in the churches where they try to guilt people into action, and it's not biblically applied. But that is what she does later in this chapter. She is trying to assign guilt to people. She's saying that your guilt needs to manifest itself not in tears but in action. She goes on to say, since many of us have not learned how racism works and our role in it, our tears may come from a shock and distress about what we didn't know or realize. Again, the guilt is not manifesting itself properly. We're supposed to remain stoic and strong, but otherwise we become angry and scared of people of color. Again, that's not my experience. And then this person is saying we are abused. This is a person of color speaking. We are abused, daily beaten, raped, and killed. And my comment to this is, which Black Lives Matter? Also, who's doing this? Because there's one thing this book doesn't mention. It's black on black crime. The men who love us. Okay, so this part has to do with, white knights coming in to rescue the women in distress. Thus, they have the power to define their own reality. That's a little more postmodernism. And that of others. This reality includes not only whose experiences are valid, but who is fundamentally valid. So, this is, again, going back to postmodernism and Marxism. In the racial frame, not all women are deemed worthy of recognition. For example, contrary to popular white mythology, white women, not people of color, have been the primary beneficiaries of affirmative action. When forced to do so, white men could acknowledge white women's humanity. Wow. She is projecting here. White men also get to authorize what constitutes pain and whose pain is legitimate. When white men come across to rescue the white woman in cross-racial settings, patriarchy is reinforced as they play savior to our damsel in distress. This author is getting pretty triggered here. Men of color also came to the aid of white women in these exchanges and may have been driven to do so by their conditioning under sexism and the patriarchy. So apparently, if you are a person of color, you cannot think for yourself. You cannot objectively see that, hey, maybe this person shouldn't be crying. Maybe I should help comfort them. You cannot apparently feel emotional about that. You have to stick with your race monolithically. Again, this is how the author views black people or Asian people. They must stick together. They must think alike. Moving on, rather than receive social capital that reinforces his status, a man of color put in this position must now live with the agony of having to support a white woman over a person of color in order to survive. Once again, she does not think black people can think for themselves. She is a racist. But our grief must lead to sustained and transformative action. Like what? What are these actions? Because I know what she's trying to say, but is too much of a coward to say it. I think she's implying revolution. But she's too much of a coward to say it. That's why she sticks to, we must interrupt racism. And then she ends, we must continue to ask how our racism manifests, not if. So, again, she's asking the wrong question. You need to prove your premise. You cannot just, anything stated without proof can, without proof, be dismissed. That's how I feel about that. If you're going to accuse someone of racism without proof, I don't need proof to dismiss your claim. That's how logic works. That's how arguments work. That's how the justice system works. So, like I said, this was the most comical chapter about how, we bring our histories with us. My name's Ray. I hope you like this video. Comment below what you think about what I said. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And I'll catch you then.